Imagine for a moment that you are completely convinced of something. You know in your bones that it is true. Maybe it is a political opinion, a view about a friend, or even just a firm belief that you are not a morning person. You probably recognize that stubborn feeling of being right, that internal certainty that shuts down any other possibility. We have all been there. Now remember when you were a kid and you realized a deeply held belief, like the existence of Santa Claus, was not quite true. That moment of cognitive dissonance, that slight cracking in your reality, is a universal human experience. It is the natural tension between what we instinctively think and a deeper, more complex awareness that is trying to break through. Many of us cling to familiar ideas because they are safe, they are known, and they form the bedrock of our daily lives. But what if that very instinct to cling to the familiar is not just a personal quirk, but something that is actively encouraged and even manufactured by the economic system we live in? This is where the ideas of a certain 19th century thinker named Karl Marx become shockingly relevant to a very modern crisis: the epidemic of drug addiction. Karl Marx's core idea is actually quite simple to grasp once we strip away the intimidating language. He observed that under capitalism, the driving force of everything is profit. The system is designed to turn everything it can into a commodity, something to be bought and sold for a financial return. This includes our labor, our time, and increasingly, even our personal struggles and desires. The goal is not human well-being. The goal is the endless accumulation of capital. Marx famously wrote that under this system, all that is solid melts into air. He meant that traditions, beliefs, and even our sense of self can become unstable, constantly reshaped by the need to keep the economic engine running. Our deepest human needs for connection, purpose, and relief from suffering do not disappear. Instead, they become new markets. This is the crucial link to the addiction crisis. Think about it. Why do people turn to substances in the first place? It is rarely about just wanting to have a good time. It is often a desperate, albeit destructive, attempt to medicate pain. It is a response to a deep sense of alienation, a feeling of being disconnected from meaningful work, from community, and from a sense of control over one's own life. This feeling is not a personal failing. It is a logical response to a world where you are often reduced to a cog in a machine, your value measured by your productivity and your ability to consume. Capitalism, in its relentless pursuit of profit, often creates the very conditions of isolation, economic anxiety, and mental anguish that make addiction a viable escape for so many. It systematically fractures the social bonds that would otherwise protect us. But the process does not stop there. It gets more insidious. The system that helps create the problem then pivots to profit from it. This is where we see the true genius and the true horror of the capitalist machine. The pain becomes a product. The despair becomes an industry. We have a multi-billion-dollar rehab industry, a pharmaceutical sector that made fortunes getting people hooked on opioids, and a prison system that profits from incarcerating non-violent drug offenders. The need for relief is met not with genuine community care or systemic change, but with a bill. The solution is offered as another commodity. We are sold the idea that our deeply human suffering is an individual medical problem to be managed with individual purchases, whether that is a pill, a treatment program, or a self-help book. We are fooled into thinking the problem is entirely within us, a character flaw, so we never look up to see the system that set the stage. This is the ultimate Barnum effect on a societal scale. We are encouraged to believe the narrow story, the one that says addiction is a simple moral failing or a purely biochemical glitch. We cling to this idea because it is simpler, and because the alternative, that the entire structure of our economy might be feeding this monster, is a much more frightening and complex truth to face. It is like realizing Santa is not real all over again, but on a massive, civilizational level. It cracks open a whole new way of seeing the world. This cracks open the entire argument and leaves us staring at the raw mechanics of the system. We start at the very beginning with a simple, almost instinctual view of the world. In this first phase, we see things in black and white. We look at a person struggling with addiction, and we see a personal failing, a moral weakness, a simple choice that went wrong. We see the pharmaceutical executive on the news, and we see a greedy villain. The problem and the solution seem equally clear-cut. The knee-jerk reaction is to blame the individual, to demand personal responsibility, to call for stronger willpower or harsher punishments. This is the surface level, where everything makes perfect, simple sense. We feel certain because the story is easy to follow. It's a comforting place to be, where the world is orderly and problems have obvious, if difficult, answers. But then we enter the confusing middle, and this is where the simple story begins to fray at the edges. This is the phase Karl Marx would have understood deeply, as he saw history not as a smooth path, but as a series of struggles and contradictions inherent to the economic system itself. You might be someone who resists change at first, holding on to that initial, simpler story because the alternative feels too vast and unsettling. Most of us feel uneasy during transitions like this. We start noticing little things that don't add up. Why are the treatments for addiction so prohibitively expensive? Why do the same companies that manufacture the problem also sell the solution? Why does our economic structure seem to reward the very behaviors that cause so much societal harm? The system appears not as a neutral backdrop, but as an active participant, and this realization is deeply disorienting. The knee-jerk reactions of blame and shame start to feel hollow, even cruel, but the new way of seeing isn't fully formed yet. It's a frustrating and alienating period where the old answers are gone, but new ones haven't arrived. We are caught in the contradiction Marx highlighted, where the system's need for profit crashes directly into its need for a stable, healthy, productive population. This tension is not a bug, but a feature, and living within it is the tough part of the journey. Gradually, almost without us realizing it, a new clarity begins to emerge from that chaotic middle. This isn't about swapping one simple story for another. It's about integrating the complexity into a deeper, more nuanced understanding. You may catch yourself pausing before reacting lately, stopping that initial knee-jerk thought about personal failure, and instead asking a different question. What were the material conditions that made this path more likely? The thoughtful response, the one that aligns with a more Marxian analysis, is to look at the structure. It is to see that capitalism, in its relentless drive for new markets and new revenue streams, doesn't just exploit addiction. It can actively, if unintentionally, cultivate it. It creates the conditions of alienation, anxiety, and economic precarity that make escape through substances a tempting refuge, and then it monetizes that escape and the subsequent attempt at recovery. The new clarity is understanding that the individual and the system are in a constant dialogue. We start to see the person not as a failed individual, but as someone navigating and often being crushed by a set of powerful economic incentives. The problem is no longer a simple one of good versus evil, but a complex web where profit is the primary motive and human well-being is often a secondary concern, if it is a concern at all. This perspective doesn't erase personal responsibility, but recontextualizes it within a much larger and more powerful framework. We begin to understand that real change requires changing not just people, but the very rules of the game. Through this discomfort, we begin to notice something subtle shifting within ourselves. It is not a loud, dramatic change, but a quiet recalibration of our internal compass. The things that used to trigger an immediate, anxious response start to lose their power over us. We might find ourselves in a familiar stressful situation, a traffic jam, a critical comment from a coworker, a looming deadline, and instead of that familiar tightening in the chest, there is a strange, new sense of calm. It is not that we do not care. It is that we are no longer being controlled by the external pressure. We are starting to operate from a different center of gravity, one that is rooted in a clearer understanding of who we are, not who we are told we should be. This is the first, fragile evidence that the journey is working, that the discomfort is indeed a form of growth and not just pointless suffering. You will likely find daily decisions coming easier. What to wear, what to eat for lunch, which task to tackle first. These small choices that once might have sparked a minor crisis of indecision begin to flow more naturally. This is not because the decisions themselves are less trivial, but because the noise that used to cloud our judgment is beginning to quiet down. That constant low-grade hum of wondering what others will think, or trying to live up to some impossible standard we saw online, starts to fade into the background. We begin to choose based on a simpler, more internal metric. What feels right for us in this moment? What aligns with the person I am discovering myself to be? This is a practical, everyday benefit of the work we are doing. It is the Barnum effect in reverse. Instead of accepting a vague general description as uniquely ours, we are rejecting the general and embracing the specific, the personal, the true. Many notice old frustrations do not bother them as much. The colleague who always interrupts, the relative who insists on debating politics at family gatherings, the endless stream of bad news on our feeds. These things are still present, but our reaction to them is fundamentally altered. We might feel a flicker of the old irritation, but it does not catch and burn into a full-blown fire of anger or despair. It is as if we have developed a new layer of emotional insulation, not made of apathy, but of perspective. We can see these frustrations for what they are, external events that we do not control. Our energy is no longer siphoned away by trying to change the unchangeable, or by raging against circumstances that simply are what they are. This freed up energy is then redirected inward, fueling our continued exploration and making us more resilient for the challenges that truly matter. This process of shedding old skins is rarely linear. There will be days when the old patterns feel comforting and the new awareness feels like a burden. We might wake up and feel the weight of it all, the sheer effort of continuously questioning and choosing. On those days, it is crucial to offer ourselves the same grace we would offer a dear friend. This is not a race, and there is no finish line to cross. It is a gradual, lifelong unfolding. The goal is not to become a perfect, finished person who is never troubled or uncertain. The goal is to become more adept at navigating the uncertainty, more comfortable with the beautiful, messy process of being human. It is about building a relationship with ourselves based on curiosity and compassion rather than criticism and control. As we continue, we start to connect the dots between our internal shifts and our external world. The way we interact with others begins to change. Conversations become more authentic because we are no longer performing a role. We listen more deeply because we are not so busy formulating our response based on what we think we should say. We set boundaries, not as walls to keep people out, but as fences to protect the sacred space of our own becoming. We find ourselves drawn to different kinds of people, those who are also on a path of genuine inquiry, who are not afraid of realness. And we may find that some old relationships naturally fall away, not with drama or conflict, but with a quiet, mutual recognition that we are no longer walking the same path. This can be painful, but it is also a sign of health, a testament to our growth. Together we discover that this entire journey, with all its discomfort and revelation, is ultimately about reclaiming our agency. It is about moving from a life that happens to us to a life that we actively participate in creating, moment by moment. We begin to understand that our thoughts and feelings are not absolute truths dictating our reality, but signals and information that we can choose how to respond to. This is the foundation of a truly empowered life. It is not about controlling every outcome, but about mastering our inner world so that we can meet the outer world with flexibility, strength, and heart. This culminates in a profound sense of liberation, a feeling that is both personal and universal. It brings to mind the key insight of Karl Marx, who understood that true freedom is not an abstract ideal, but a lived reality, achieved through the conscious act of throwing off the constraints that bind us. He suggested that this freedom feels less like a theoretical concept and more like a physical, palpable release, like finally taking off shoes that never quite fit, shoes we did not even realize were constricting us until we felt the incredible relief of wiggling our toes in the fresh air and solid ground, free to walk our own path at last.